Hey guys, we got our final tier list ready to go. I'm going to be doing the top 3 cells for each type here. And I'd just like to see if I can get 5 more subs with today's video. That'll get me up to 500. So if you haven't subbed yet and you've been enjoying my content, please do so. My goal is to put out content every day, and I've pretty much been doing that for the last couple weeks here. So with that, let's get right into the tier list. I'm just gonna hop right into a prismatic section. Let me pull up my list here. So for the defense cells, I typically don't recommend running these on top tier builds, but if you're just looking to, kind of meander through stuff lazily, definitely recommend some of these. Now, there's not a lot of very good ones. There's only a couple. So number 3 is going to be 9 lives. It's only a chance to have damage. You really need to spend the 2 cell slots to make it worthwhile. So it's not super great, but it's one of the better overall defense cells. Number 2, a lot of people use this one. We're going to be talking about tough here, and I particularly don't like this cell. A couple reasons, and that's because the return you usually get out of it is not worth the investment. For example, lots of people like to pair tough with Tenacious, but you're getting, I think, an extra 500 health out of +6, which when you're using Tenacious only equates to 10%. And spending 2 cells to get 10% more damage is not optimal. But, that's, if you really want the extra health, then tough is fine. It also pairs very slightly well with some other things, like Valamir. The Valamir weapon special ability, it reduces the cooldown from 10 seconds to 7 seconds. So it's like you get a little more uptime out of that Valamir bond, but I still really don't think it's worth it. But the number 1 and the biggest reason that now we're talking about parasitic here, the biggest reason I think parasitic deserves a number 1 slot is because you only need 1 cell slotted to really get the full effect out of the cell. Getting it up to +6 doesn't really do that much extra for you. So if you want some extra survivability and some lifesteal, just 1 parasitic cell does a fantastic job. So if any defense cells, that's the one I recommend. Moving on to the next category here, we have the power cells. Now, there's lots of good power cells, but since I'm only doing the top 3, we're going to be talking about these here. Now, in conjunction with what I was just talking about, we're going to get over to Tenacious. So if you're running Tenacious without Berserker, it's 22% more damage. And if you're running it with Berserker, it's 16% more damage. That's assuming you're running Berserker 6. So it's a pretty decent chunk of damage. It's not as high as some of the other ones you're going to get, but I do feel the fact that it's applied 100% of the time, as opposed to, say, a Rage Hunter bonus, makes it barely peek over like the Rage Hunter type buffs that you're only getting some of the time by just a little bit. So with that, the top 2 should be fairly obvious to anybody that knows anything about the cells. Number 2, I'm calling Overpower. And the reason I'm calling Overpower number 2 and not number 1 is because there are a few situations where it's not great, namely trials and heroic escalations, or just really tough behemoths like Chronovore, where you're not really getting a lot of use out of the Overpower. But pretty much anything else, like hunting grounds or escalations 10 to 50 or lower, you're getting massive use out of Overpower. So it's absolutely fantastic. And the number 1, if you probably guessed it, is Berserker. Fantastic on almost every weapon. Pretty much the only weapon that I wouldn't consider using it on is axe and hammer. And wow, it's just really fantastic Saw on almost every weapon. Tons and tons of damage comes out of this thing. Easily, in my opinion. It's actually close between Berserker and Overpower, but it barely beats out Overpower there, but it's still a really, really solid sell. So definitely recommend picking it up as soon as you can if you're uh, deciding what to buy from Lady Luck Shop. If you don't have anything from Lady Luck Shop, I'd say buy Berserker first, unless you're planning to main repeaters, then get Discipline first, because Discipline's the only way you're going to be able to boot stuff reliably. But other than that, yeah, nab Berserker. It's just great, great, great sell. On to the next one, we have the mobility cells. Now, number 3 and number 2 kind of work together here. Number 3 is endurance, which increases max stamina, which by itself is absolute trash. But when you compare it with number 2 here, which is adrenaline, increases damage based on maximum stamina. So you're gonna really pair those two together a lot. And the only reason I picked that over, I feel like I should at least mention this, Evasive Fury, is because Evasive Fury isn't as reliable to increase your attack speed unless you're doing trials or heroic escalations. So most of the time I'm going to recommend running Assassin's Frenzy instead, because you're typically going to be getting part breaks a lot more frequently than you're going to be getting dodges. And that is the number 1 mobility cell there for that exact reason. Super reliable, especially with part break weapons like sword, chain blades, or repeaters, or axe. Like almost every weapon is just going to be, you're going to be getting part break after part break with these meta builds once you get all your gear and stuff leveled up. So highly, highly recommend Assassin's Frenzy on pretty much every weapon build. The only exception being repeaters if you're doing an escalation build, because repeaters already have Captain's Grip, and you're already getting a lot of attack speed out of the amps from escalations usually. So between those two things and the passive attack speed from strikers, if you have the 10 reforges and strikers, you're not really going to be getting any use out of this as soon as you nab a attack speed amp because of the attack speed cap. So really great mobility cell, easily number 1. On to the next cell type, which is the technique cells. Now there is a lot of really good technique cells, and I could probably talk about 5 or 6 of these and why they're really good, but I'm just going to get into what I think is the best 3 here. Number 3 is Pulse, and Pulse is great. You got lots of fun things you can do with Pulse that just really make the whatever you're playing a lot of fun. You can mix it with Embermane, Weapon Bond, so that they sit at the same number. You can mix it with Hellion Weapon Bond, so that the damage bonus is always going to be on your critical strike. You can mix it with weapons that have really big damaging hits, like Reaper's Dance builds, or one-shot axe builds, and like make sure that axe throw crits every time. It's really a super fun cell, and it's really powerful. So if you're using a build that uses any of those kinds of things where every so many hits you know you're getting a bonus, always throw Pulse in with that. Really great. Number 2 is right above it. We're talking Pred, and Pred is one of the highest damaging cell bonuses that you can get yourself. Obviously, it requires a lot of skill to use, because you really have to know the Behemoth movesets to really get full use out of it and keep that bonus up. But it's just a massive amount of damage there. Just ridiculously high amount of damage. And speaking of ridiculously high amounts of damage, we got Cunning at number 1. And Cunning beats out Pred because Cunning gives you well, first of all, it's typically the first thing that gives you critical strike rating. and it also gives you an absolutely massive critical damage bonus. 30% is a lot. And typically when you're running Cunning, you're stacking other things on top of that. You're either running Pulse, like I was just talking about with one of the other builds, or you're running Galvanized with a Bastion build to get some big crit combos, or you're just running it by itself because you know that you're going to be taking Destruction Amp and Frost Eskas, or just whatever. Like it's almost a must-have in every build, practically. Like I really can't think of a single build that I wouldn't want to use Cunning in. So just great sell there. On to our final category, we have utility. And utility has changed a bit slightly, which you'll see right away in the number 3 slot because of the cell changes. So we have Molten here at number 3. This is brand new to being a utility cell. It used to be a technique cell. So I would never take Molten probably six months ago. But 2 years ago, it was a top tier cell, and being switched to a utility cell, it's now kind of sort of become a top tier cell again, because it's a great way to just add some attack speed in with a utility cell, which is almost mind-bogglingly good. Especially with weapons where you don't want to clog up your other slots with attack speed options. Like if you don't want to spend a mobility cell to get the Assassin's Frenzy, or you just want to add it on because you're doing hunting grounds and not escalations, and you want some extra attack speed because you're not going to hit that attack speed cap with amps. It's just a great utility cell now. On to number 2. We have Cascade, and it was actually a really close call between Cascade and Molten, I thought. Cascade is also absolutely fantastic for a lot of builds. The red orbs are really good. The yellow orbs are particularly good with certain weapons, like sword, or let me think here. The Warpike spin to win. No, not Warpike spin to win, because you're using Adrenaline Endurance. But if you're not using Adrenaline Endurance on a weapon that eats stamina quickly, the yellow orbs are absolutely fantastic. If you want to spend the extra 3 points on Cascade, you're getting shields from those green orbs now, so you can start stacking higher and higher shields if you're running a galvanized build, which will take you over the normal cap limit of like 17 or 1800. Because I know I've said this in my old videos, but those shields that the +6 Cascade orbs give you are permanent. They last forever, obviously, unless somebody hits you. But it's pretty sweet. And then of course the purple Skittles. I try not to rely on those too much, because a lot of times he'll be like, "Oh, I'm invincible. I can take the hit," and then it runs out like right as he's flopping on you or something. So I don't know why my brain went to Drask just falling over on you, but that's where my brain went. So yeah, Cascade's really good. The other, but I definitely think the biggest benefit of Cascade is the red orb there. Really good for a lot of weapons. And then of course number 1 is going to be Catalyst. Catalyst is just so overpowered, and the only thing you're limited by is the number of tonics you have. So if you want to just absolutely obliterate a behemoth, bring a Catalyst tonic, pop on your Blitz tonic, pop on your Frenzy tonic, and most likely your Ether Drive tonic, unless you're running a stagger weapon, then maybe Assault, or a wound weapon, then maybe an Insight. But they're just all just absurdly overpowered. And if you want to laugh, stick on a Bulwark tonic with that, because that basically makes you invincible. Like anything that hits you is gonna like barely move your hit point bar for those 5 hits. It's pretty funny. But those are the top cells that I've picked out. I think they're all great cells, except maybe 9 lives. 9 lives is pretty bad, but I had to pick something for the number 3 defense cell. But With that, I hope you guys enjoyed my series. This is going to be the last one in my my top list video series. So if you want to see something specific, please leave a comment and I might get around to it. I do have plans to do a survivability build, which is the build that I typically use for heroic escalations. And I'm also going to be we're doing some work on the new Omni Cell, which I've already picked up here. The what's it called? Revenant Omni Cell. So expect a video on that in the next couple days here. And with that, I am going to peace out.